I had a period where I lost a VP job at what I thought was the peak of my career, and I thought my career was over at that point. But quite honestly, like for all of us, nothing is linear, nothing is straight up, especially in our careers. It was just a fall from the ladder, and it gave me an opportunity to really reflect on my leadership style at the time and how I needed to change it.
Today on the podcast, I have a very special guest. It is my pleasure to welcome Robert Adams on the Career Dad podcast. Robert is a behavioral leadership coach with over 30 years of experience. And he is a creator of the place setting framework, which we're diving into in today's podcast. And he's the founder of A Student of Leadership. Robert started his career as a chef and then spent 3 decades climbing from sales into executive leadership roles across multiple organizations. And his journey was not linear. He made mistakes, he lost roles, he lost confidence, and he is actually sharing this story on the podcast today. And those moments really clarified something for him. Leadership is not actually about having it all figured out. It is about staying curious, practicing small behaviors, habits, as he calls them, consistently, and also inviting others to help you see yourself clearly. And in this episode, he breaks down exactly how you get that feedback and how you get others to help you develop on your journey as a leader. So whether you are a new leader or you have been leading teams for years now, in this episode, Robert shares his frameworks and his philosophy around how to become a better leader. Let's dive in. Oh, welcome, Robert, to the Career Dad podcast. We are so excited to have you here today and dive all into your experience in leadership and lessons you've learned along the way. So excited for our conversation today. Welcome.
Yeah, Anna, thank you so much for inviting me. I know it's been a long time coming for us to get together. You're busy and I'm busy. We're both kind of running our businesses, if you will. And so lots of stuff going on. But it is exciting to take some time and really reflect a little bit on some things that I think the audience will enjoy hearing. So thank you for having me.
All right. Well, I would love for us to start with a little bit of your story. And I know we were chatting just before we started recording that you actually just retired from your full-time work, but you're continuing with leadership training. So I would love to hear, I know it's a lot to summarize, a lot of years of experience to summarize, but I would love to hear your journey, how you came into the leadership roles, and then how you came into this kind of most recently into training. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so 40 years plus in the making, but we won't spend 40 years talking about it for sure. But it has been, when I reflect back now, you know, it's weird as we were talking about being retired, that sort of freedom of the feeling you have of, and looking back and reflecting on what you accomplished and all of the challenges that came with those accomplishments. And so my leadership journey actually, quite honestly, and it's, we'll talk about it in a bit about my framework, but it started really with my mom. And way back as a child, young child, teenager, my mom was trying to help make ends meet for the family. My dad didn't make a lot of money. He ended up, unfortunately, dying early. I was in my mid-20s. But my mom started her own catering business, and she needed help. And she came from Greek heritage. Both her parents came over to the United States. They both lived with us. So she was caring for them. She was caring for my dad when he got sick, and she was running this catering business. And so I became the server, the bartender, the production crew, whatever she needed, she would take me with her to help her with her catering jobs. And everything was really approached from a care and loving standpoint with my mom. Being from a Greek heritage, just culturally, food is centric. and so important to everything. And the place setting for her was very important. It was formal, and it established her way of showing love and caring as well in the way the place setting was set. And so I learned so many things that were leadership driven, although I didn't connect the dots back then. Fast forward to my journey being initially in sales, and then somebody tapping me on the shoulder and saying, hey, we'd love for you to be a leader of yourself initially, and then soon you'll hire a team. And I went through that. So I had a lot of sales leadership journey, and that turned into general leadership later in my career. I ran a division as a president. My biggest role ever, 350 employees, almost $400 million in sales volume, and full P&L responsibility of every functional area. And through all of that period of time, those all 40 years, I stumbled, I bumbled, I fell. In fact, I had a period where I lost a VP job at what I thought was the peak of my career. And I thought my career was over at that point. But quite honestly, like for all of us, nothing is linear, nothing is straight up, especially in our careers. It was just a fall from the ladder, and it gave me an opportunity to really reflect on my leadership style at the time and how I needed to change it, quite honestly.
All right. I would love to hear about that. I would love to hear about that because I believe that most of us see, the wins, right? You go on LinkedIn and all you see is, I'm happy to announce I got this role. And realistically, we don't really see how people got there. We don't really see the falls that you mentioned.
No.
And I think it's such an important conversation. And I think more people need to hear that, that happens and that's part of the journey, probably normal part of the journey. And most people will experience it. So I would love to hear from you. What were, I know you summarized 40 years in just a couple of minutes, but
Yeah.
reflecting back, what would you say were some of the biggest mistakes that you've made in your journey as you're maybe becoming a new leader and then growing as a leader?
Yeah, when I reflect back to that very first leadership job, that very first time I had responsibility for others instead of just myself, right, as an individual contributor before. And in many cases, sometimes you're with your peers and then you're the leader of peers. My situation wasn't necessarily that because I moved to a new geographic area, but, my company was not prepared to develop me in a way and spend the time and investment in a way to get me prepared for the difference between being a manager of tasks and a leader and coach of people. And there is the separation because I was a taskmaster. I was, tell people today when I coach, what I'm looking for in you and what you should be looking for yourself in being an admired leader is striking the balance between the results you want to achieve with you and your team and the company and the relationships and trust that you're establishing. And you have to find a way to balance the two. And most people lean one way or the other, and both of them are fatal mistakes. And I leaned transactional. I leaned results. And I didn't know any better. And my people were the guinea pigs for my lack of leadership skills at the time. So I managed tasks. I managed numbers. And it wasn't until years later. Now, did I get results? I did. But they're typically not comfortable, not sustainable, and surely not as fun when you're leading that way for both the receiver and the giver, which was my early experience as a leader, trial by error.
Which I think is very common.
It is.
Because most people don't get any sort of training, right? You get promoted and then that's it. Figure it out for yourself. But everything you have learned so far in your career is only part of it. It's only part of the success as a leader. So I am curious, what helped you really develop this other skill set, right? So when we get into that first leadership role, we typically are a really good executor, which is how we got there, which is how we got promoted oftentimes. So I'm curious what helped you grow that other skill set, the leadership skill set.
Yeah, to your point, we get promoted for competency of knowledge and experience of the job, and not those important soft skills that are associated with developing people, developing ourselves, right? All those elements that come into play. So what happened for me is I found a good coach. I found a good leader that finally was honest with me, that finally gave me the feedback that I really needed, the hard, painful, right in your face, unfortunately, reality of how I was managing, not leading.
Would you mind sharing what that feedback was?
Yeah, it was, Rob, you've left your people behind you and you're so fixated on everything other than them and their success. Now, I didn't view myself as a selfish leader. It wasn't malice. It wasn't out of a desire for me to rise and look good. That's not the place that I was coming from. I wanted to do good. I wanted to be good. And I felt like driving, those numbers and driving the transactions and being a micromanager a bit, like that I couldn't trust. If I didn't do it, it wasn't going to be good enough. That it had to be me, right? I was trying to build myself up, but not through a selfish act. And many leaders are that way. They're not doing it. Now, some are driven from selfish reasons. Sometimes you see individual contributors that don't make good leaders because they are so selfish. It's all about them. It wasn't necessarily about me, but I felt like that's the way I was going to find success. And the leader hit me smack in the face and said, if you don't make the pivot and you don't start to balance the way you lead between relationships and results, you're not going to be a leader anymore, flat out. Not on my watch.
So, Robert, if someone is listening right now and they're recognizing themselves in this, that, I am very focused on me and driving results and what I essentially have been doing my whole career that has served me actually so far.
That's right.
What would you recommend as their first step, something that they can do this month to start seeing?
Yeah. Put it bluntly, open the kimono.
Okay.
Open the kimono and expose themselves to the feedback and feed forward they essentially need. Now, you can do that many ways. What I coach today is the Marshall Goldsmith methodology, which is really about making it about the stakeholders and those people who you report to, so whoever your direct leader is, B, your direct reports, and C, the peers you work with. They know better than you. The mirror does not tell the complete story. In fact, it makes you feel good when you look in the mirror. And we're not as self-aware as we really are, unfortunately. We think we are. We think we don't have blind spots. But it begins by exposing yourself. That's why I say open the kimono. You have to be willing to open yourself up to finally get what others see from their perception. And until you do that, you're not going to get to a point where you will evolve as a leader to the extent that you need to.
Can you give us an example of what that can look like? So you talked about 3 different groups of stakeholders. How would I go about getting that type of feedback from them?
Yeah, so initially what you want to do is, and the way the methodology works simplistically, is identify one thing, and this can come from a combination of doing a very formal 360 that many of us I've been through so many of them, that the first ones hurt a lot, and then they get better and better. And then you start to embrace them and say, yes, give me more, tell me more, what else? And so a formal 360, you can use many different platforms to do it, but that's one way to do it. a coach can conduct behavioral interviews with those stakeholders to receive input as well in combination with the 360. And then the leader should also be having a conversation with their leader if maybe they're already involved in an individual development plan or some type of development plan, to really understand what's no more than 1 to 2 behaviors that they can work on that would make them that much better of a leader. Maybe it's, I need to be a better listener, as one simple example. And so the combination of the 360, the behavioral interviews, discussion with your leader lands you to 1 to 2 behaviors. So now you have, let's say it's listening.
Hmm. So you mentioned, 360, and
Yeah.
that is typically something that is, facilitated by the company itself. And then you mentioned the behavioral interviews. Can you talk a little bit about what that can look like? So is it something that I would initiate with, let's say, my peers, people on my team that are reporting to me, and my boss?
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend that I do there?
Yeah, so the behavioral interviews are definitely more formal where a coach would be involved. But to get to your even more simplistic thing, here's what a leader can do. If they want to, in 3 minutes or less, get feedback and feed forward, right? So Marshall Goldsmith talks about the difference between feedback and feed forward, right? So the best visual I always use is looking in the rearview mirror or looking in front of me in terms of the windshield. So I can ask 2 simple questions of my peers, of my direct reports, and my leader. Can you tell me in the last 30 days, and let's say I wanted to work on one skill, which happened to be listening, right? So I know that I need to be a better listener. In the last 30 days, can you share with me something that I've done that you've observed that helps improve or diminish my ability to be a better listener from your lens? So number 1, feedback. Tell me what I've done in the last 30 days that you can give me some feedback on. And then the second question is, over the next 30 days, what would you recommend? What else could I be doing to improve my listening? So looking back, looking forward, looking back, looking forward. If I just did that on a consistent and regular basis and sought the feedback and feed forward that I needed from my peers, I'd start to learn whether in that area of specifically this behavioral area of listening, am I getting better? Am I status quo? Or am I getting worse?
Love that. It's so simple, back and forward.
That's it.
But it really gives you a very simple but straightforward and helpful perspective on what you have done and what you can still be doing. Thank you for sharing that. I am hearing a trend with everything that you're sharing.
Yes.
And that is, asking for feedback and being open. And you mentioned, the mirror and seeing yourself versus really asking 360 different types of stakeholders. So it really sounds to me that there is a theme there around other people and around asking and around being open and learning from other people, including people reporting to you. So would you say that's something that you believe makes a good leader?
You can't develop yourself in a vacuum. You can't. And whether it's your family, your friends, those you lead, those that lead you, those you work with, it is so critically important that we are getting the feedback and feed forward we need to develop. And that it's life lessons. It's not leadership lessons, but it's life, right? Do we get feedback from our spouses, our children, our parents? Of course we do. It happens all day, every day. The question is what do we do with it, right, as human beings? And so that's really what we're pulling back is something so simplistic, but yet so powerful and yet so hard.
It is hard. I was going to say that it is hard. It is hard to continue to ask, and that's what I'm hearing. Continue to ask for feedback and continue to hear feedback and continue to act on it as well. It's probably quite hard for most of us to do.
It is. And you go back to the competency piece and the promotion piece that you talked about. You're a career coach, and you talk about helping people get new elevated jobs, new responsibility, bigger responsibility, right? Most people get elevated by their competency, knowledge, skill, and no one is really questioning or checking or measuring or developing those other areas around relationships and trust building and culture building. And quite honestly, they become even more important the more you move up, but the less they're getting measured and challenged or even checked or being developed. And therein lies the disconnect for leaders at all levels, especially the ones that have moved up multiple times, multiple companies, multiple ways.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I talk about this often, that and that's what I see often with senior professionals. They have spent their entire career growing their professional skills. So really the subject matter expertise. And it feels like that's the most important piece. And then in job search, specifically in senior job search, when they start job searching, they often realize, wait, why is that not working? I'm the most qualified, the most experienced I've ever been. Like, it should be easier, not harder than before. And I always challenge them that the more senior that you are, the less it is about your subject matter expertise, but the more the relationship piece becomes important, and you being willing and open and knowing how to get in front of the right people, how to build that right connection, that right relationship, and knowing how to hear them. That's what we focus a lot as well. It's not about you, it's about them and what's important to them and their priorities, and then how to use that to help them see that you can help them. So it's interesting that it's a very similar trend that I'm hearing from you as well. Now, Robert, I know you have built a leadership framework around a table setting, which is what you started with, and your mom and that catering business. So talk to us a little bit about what that is and how it helps develop leaders.
Yeah, so there's so much, and you, like I, we're on social quite a bit, even more specifically LinkedIn, a business network, and there's so much generic leadership content out there. And in that sea of saturation of general leadership, I wanted something that would stand out and visually capture somebody, and most importantly, myself, because it represents who I am as a leader, and it has a personal connection for me, right? It goes back to where I started at this conversation with you, which was my mom, that formal place setting that she always set. It was around love and care, and that's that relationship piece that we're talking about, that trust piece, that human piece. And for me, the place setting, as I started to peel it back, each element, each tool, each piece represents a part of leadership. I'll give you an example, right? So we'll talk about the plate, the knife, the fork, the spoon, the napkin, the glass, and then the table that it rests on, right? So beginning with the plate. The plate, if you think about it, is foundational. It's everything that we put on top of it, right? The food we consume, right? The other thing about food, right, is that it's personal, it's social, it's endearing, it's so loving, isn't it? Everything we do in life is usually with food, isn't it? Yeah. Our daughter's coming home this weekend from NYU, and she's like, Dad, we're grilling out. We're having steaks. I want chimichurri and et cetera, et cetera. And so it's so social and so loving and so caring. And it expresses, when you think about breaking bread, I want to go break bread. I want to be with somebody socially. It is a way of showing care and love and giving in so many ways, in celebration, right? And so when you think about food, you think about the place setting. It has a lot of meaning behind it. So the plate, foundational. It's your character. It's your integrity. Everything rests on it. The knife, it's to the right side of the plate, and the edge points inward. And when you think about a knife, it has a sharp edge that you cut with, and a softer edge, which is the backside. So that's about being a leader that's balanced between accountability and relationships. When do I use the sharp edge? When do I use the soft edge of the knife? That's judgment and precision, right? When do I strike that balance? The fork, that's the main utensil we use to consume or absorb, right? So that's about consumption, absorption, and growth, right? When we think about the fork. The spoon is about nourishing, right? Think about giving somebody a spoonful. Think of your mom when she gave you a spoonful of medicine to make you feel better when you were young, right? That was through nourishment. And that nourishment also includes development, right? How are we developing not only our people, but are we developing ourselves to have the energy to develop our people? So that's that nourishment and development piece. The glass, when we fill it, is it clear? Can I see through it? Am I providing clarity and transparency in the way I communicate to my team? Or is my message cloudy and not clear to my team? Am I being honest and open to the extent that I can as a leader? The napkin, think about it, it lays on your lap. It represents dignity and presence. Am I there for those small moments, those moments where it doesn't matter? Am I walking down the hall one day as the senior vice president of the company and a brand new employee walks by and I acknowledge and recognize them and they're scared to death because I'm the senior vice president of whatever? But it doesn't matter to me because it's human to human. That's the dignity and presence we give to others, removing authority, removing that sort of power position that we're in, and showing our vulnerability and humility as a leader. Right. And then finally, the table. The table is the space, right? It's the legacy. It's where I invite you to come join me. Come join me at the table. Pull up a chair side by side together. And so when you think about that, now when I describe all of that stuff, does it start to make sense?
Absolutely. And it's also something that makes it easy to really see and remember every single element when you think about it in that way. So absolutely, right. I love this framework.
Yeah. And it started with my mom, and it started with that formal place setting, and it started with things that I didn't even realize were leadership until I became a leader and went through all of those years of good and bad and pitfalls and falling off the ladder and getting back on again. And then it hit me one day about this whole framework and how it could, for myself, selfishly, if you will, right, like solidify, validate some things to me.
So how did you use it yourself, or how do you teach other people to use it? Is it focusing on one element at a time? Is it, and kind of developing that skill specifically, 1 month at a time? Or is it, looking at it holistically? And how often would I even look at it?
Yeah, so this goes back to our earlier conversation. You're going to see another pattern here, Anna. It definitely is a pattern. So I want you to think of the framework in three pieces, right? So the first part is the element, right? That's the foundation and understanding of what each element represents in leadership, right? As we talked about just a minute ago. In the middle part of that is really the plays, and the plays are the behaviors. So we'll go back to that listening example, right? How do I become a better listener? So first I understand the foundation of each element, right? And they all represent different things. Then I get to what actual play or behavior should I be working on? And I'll explain how you can do that to help give you clarity and get you there. And then finally, we're going to get all the way to the right on the engine. And that's a combination of Marshall Goldsmith and that whole stakeholder methodology, along with, I love James Clear, who wrote The Atomic Habit. Habits are hard to build. And so a combination of breaking things down in very small bites and simple things. I'll give you a good example. I used to be a big runner. I can't run anymore because I trashed my hips over life. And so now I have bionic hips, but I walk like super fast. And so the way my little tiny thing to get myself outside, all I have to do is get my running shoe on. Just get it on, and now I'm on my way. That's the smallest thing I'm trying to accomplish, to go take a walk for the day. Just get my shoe on, right? Start there. So James talks about those small pieces. So the blending that's the engine, right? So you've got the element, the play, and the engine. And that's the full, if you will, framework playbook of the place setting, right? And so I've actually created an assessment that helps you. It's 28 powerful, reflective questions, 4 questions for each element. So 4 times 7, 28. And in literally 6 minutes, if you're honest with yourself in terms of how you assess where you're at in these very deep and reflective questions of each element, it's going to show you which element you should focus on. And then it's going to give you 3 very simple plays that you can run tomorrow to support that one specific behavior you're trying to work on. And then you have to deploy your stakeholders and a little bit of James Clear Atomic Habits to keep things going.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And would you be open to sharing the assessment with us?
I will.
Okay, we'll make sure to link it in the show notes so that you can take the assessment and really see the areas that you can start working on. Starting today, starting this month, I'm big on taking action and not just listening and learning. But you talked about putting your shoes on, but that one thing that you can do today. One more thing, Robert, that I want to talk about today is I know you talk often about the power of one-on-one, and you talk about how this is one of the most important meeting that a leader can have. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Why do you believe it's so important? Because I have seen a lot of leaders kind of dismiss one-on-ones and say that, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
So talk to us about your philosophy around one-on-ones.
Yeah, this is such a great topic, and it goes so well with everything else that we've talked about, because I do believe that the one-on-one is the most important and the most powerful meeting that we can have, both for ourselves as well as our teams. In fact, I'd love for companies to literally do a deep dive on every single meeting that they have and identify how many wasteful meetings they have, that they have the wrong people in the room. They don't have a solid agenda or purpose for the meeting. And most of them are updates. Tell me about what's going on with this. Can you give me a project update on that? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of those are wasteful company organizational meetings. There should be meetings around action. strategy, solving challenges, etc. But I digress for a second because, first of all, organizations need to be honest about the amount of meetings they have, because that drives exactly what you just said, which is the one-on-one gets delayed, get canceled, rescheduled, or never happens to begin with. And then if it is a one-on-one, and I am guilty of this, I did it for so many years the wrong way, it was an update. Hey, I'd go in, it was my agenda as the leader to my direct report. Hey, John, can you give me an update on where we stand on this? When's that project going to get done? Can you tell me about the status of that? Etc., etc., etc. The meeting should not exist. That can
actually recognizing myself, because it's so easy to get sucked into that.
Yes.
Because that's what's top of mind for you, is that,
of course,
that project or that whatever it is that your team is working on. And what I actually started doing is just asking them for a video update. This way it's, a 3-minute video. I got the updates. If I have follow-up questions, I can just ask the questions. We don't actually need for both of us to be there to have that meeting. So I think that's I can definitely recognize myself, and it's definitely something that is hard to resist. So what should that 101 be like instead?
Yeah. So now if we take away the updates, what the heck do we talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are 4 main pillars that should represent a one-on-one, and nothing else should come into the one-on-one other than the 4 I'm about to share with everyone. And also keep in mind, it doesn't mean you're doing all of these at every single one-on-one, right? So that you're kind of rotating between them, prioritizing along the way. The other thing I would say in terms of structure and timing of one-on-ones, a little bit about that, if you have a newer person that you're coaching or leading, you might want to do more frequent one-on-ones just because they're getting acclimated with the company, and you're checking in on those kinds of things, those challenges that they might be facing. But cadence can vary. Length, usually 30 to 60 minutes, right? Usually one-on-ones for most people every other week, once a month, not every week. There's not enough stuff that goes on week to week that you need to connect with somebody literally every week, especially if you're not doing an update, right? So no updates. And here's the 4 things. The first is, Anna, what obstacles are you facing? What challenges are you facing? What roadblocks are getting in your way to be the most effective in your role? I want to understand that. What do I need to get out of the way for you? That's number 1. That's the number 1 priority. How can I make you feel better about supporting you without doing it for you, without taking the responsibility as I'm going to do this for you? No. What can I do to support you in these obstacles, roadblocks, challenges that you're facing? That's number 1. Number 2, feedback, feed forward, right? We should be working on and in balance. It's not the leader down to the direct report that I'm providing all the feedback and feed forward, but it should be both directions in balance, and that we should be getting good at sharing everything back and forth with one another. Got to do that. Third, developmental. We talked about the spoon, the nourishing and development. Are we feeding our people with anything? Are they working on an individual development plan? Do they have career aspirations? And if so, what is it? Do they need a stretch project to challenge them more? Is there a specific skill that they're working on? Are they part of a 360 or some type of coaching program, developmental program that they're involved in, right? Anything and everything associated with career and development. And you should be doing that at least once per quarter. It doesn't have to be every month because, and again, you're working on things. But that's where you might get deeper and talking about some of the developmental things you're working on and getting that feedback feed forward in combination where you might be working on one specific behavior. Let's say it's listening, and you're trying to get better at it. So that's where that can come into play in the one-on-ones. And then finally, relationship development, trust building. How are we forming a stronger bond with one another? And that's not, hey, Anna, what'd you do this weekend? Did you have a nice weekend? Did you do anything exciting? It's got to be much deeper than that. It's got to be much deeper, much deeper. Hey, Anna, can you tell me what, like from an experiential standpoint, what would be your bucket list thing you'd love to do in your life? Doesn't that seem more deep than what'd you do this weekend? Or like, I know you like to read. What's the latest book you picked up, and what did you gain from it? Tell me something that you really enjoyed about the book, right? Like you can go so many different places on icebreaker questions that ask people something deeper, broader, wider than just something so superficial that just doesn't feel sincere. And so those four things, that's it. Obstacles, feedback, feed forward, career development, trust and relationship building. That's the only four things that should be entering a one-on-one. You should never skip a one-on-one, never defer it, never cancel it. It should be your highest priority meeting you have in the entire organization, period, end of story. And you're sending a message of how important it is when you do that. And imagine if you're a leader and you have 4 to 6 direct reports, let's say, those are your 4 to 6 most important meetings that you're doing every other week, once a month, and nothing moves those. Nothing.
Well, that's an excellent reminder, because I'm probably like a lot of people guilty sometimes where it's a busy week. Let's just move this meeting when it comes to my own team. And I think we're all guilty of that. So this is an excellent reminder. And I love this framework. I'm definitely taking it with me for my team. Now, Robert, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your knowledge and how you're thinking about leadership and your mistakes along the way that you've learned and your lessons. If people listening to this episode want to learn more from you, where can they find you?
A couple different places. So I do a ton of posting and writing on 2 different social platforms. The first is LinkedIn. You'll find me there every single day. As you know, Anna, we engage on a regular basis. I write about all of this, my whole framework, reinforcing the framework, one-on-one meetings, you name it. You're going to see a common theme with everything that I write about. So you can just look me up, Robert Adams, and we'll provide the exact link in the show notes to my profile, but you'll see a ton of it. I also write a lot on Substack. So I write a much larger newsletter on Substack, and you can go to theleadershiptable.net. That's my URL to Substack, theleadershiptable.net. And again, you're going to find a ton of the framework, the playbook, and everything associated. You're going to hear me talk about Marshall and stakeholders and feed forward all the time. I know people were kind of thinking, who is this crazy guy with a fork and a spoon and a knife and a plate? And I think initially people didn't necessarily make the connection to my visuals of what I was trying to share. How does that apply to leadership, and where does that show up? And so I think people are finally starting to get my metaphor around the place setting framework and leadership. And that's exciting for people to learn and develop. And then we will provide a link to that 28 question assessment that is really, the questions are thought-provoking and very reflective, very deep. I think people will enjoy going through it to learn more about themselves.
We will make sure to link your LinkedIn, Substack, and assessment in the show notes. Once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge with us today. It was a pleasure having you on the Career Dad podcast today.
Thank you so much.